it was my job to pick up my sister from ballet school. My sister was 6 years old, and at the time, all the 10-year-olds would go pick up their little 6-year-old sisters because somebody thought that it was good to have all these little kids picking each other up and walking each other home, because child molesters would never take two. So I'm waiting there. I had on my green shirt, which I looked like 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound sack. And it was my favorite shirt. And it was summertime, and I'm waiting, and I looked over to the distance, and the kids weren't coming out. And I was like, what's going on here? So more older brothers start coming, and one older brother looks over at me, and he looks at me and he says, hey you, with the green shirt, are you a boy or a girl? You look like a boy, but you got boobies like a girl. I didn't know what to say. All the other kids start laughing, and I look over at him, and like deer in the headlights, I just stood there. And then he goes and asks me, how'd you get those big boobies? And I didn't know what a rhetorical question was, so of course I just looked at him and I answered. And I said, my mother makes me eat rice. And I really believed that. I knew that I had a flat chest until one day my mother said, you gotta eat the rice. So my sister comes out and we're going home, and that night was Greek pasticcio night. Now, anybody here knows what pasticcio is?
Yeah.
It's a noodle and meat dish covered in bechamel sauce. It's like the most fattening thing you could ever eat. And I couldn't say a word because that's my favorite, and I said there's no way that I'm gonna not let them eat pasticcio and have like 3 or 4 helpings. So I tell my sister not to say a word. I get home, my grandfather's there because he always comes on Greek pasticcio night. And in Greek we call Grandpa Papu. So I say hello to Papu. Papu is like, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I said nothing, nothing, nothing. And my sister goes and blurts out what happened. And he looks at me and he says, that's the way we are, Greek men. Greek men, we have big chests because we're warriors and we fight, we're gladiators. That was supposed to make me feel good because there's lots of gladiator fights in Tenafly, New Jersey. So I'm feeling exasperated, and my grandfather's like, don't worry, tomorrow we fix it. Now my grandfather came from Greece, and he worked on the railroad when he first got here, and he went from New York all the way to Wyoming on the railroad, and everywhere that he went, he would see a Sears. And no matter what he needed, he knew Sears had whatever ailed him. So he looks at me and he said, tomorrow we go to Sears. And I said, okay. And as an aside, we were prohibited from shopping anywhere but Sears. In fact, my father said to me, when Papu is here, we only go to Sears. So the next day we go to Sears and we walk in and he sees the sales girl and he says, I need clothes for my grandson. And she looks at me and she sizes me up, and then she just says, ooh, he needs to go to the Huskys department. Now, for those of you that don't know, Sears had this whole department dedicated to fat kids called Huskys. So we go there, I get the Huskys, and everyone in school knew what Huskys were. You know, so as an adult, I wasn't traumatized enough. Now I had boobies, and I had a big label on my ass that said Husky. So, you know, it was traumatizing. But I said, you know what? We're going to go home. We're going to make the best of it. It's summertime. I'm not going to worry about it. My mother, on the other hand, sees me, my brother and sister all getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So she worked at Air France, and she was going to have none of this. No fat kids for her. So she decided to ask her friends what to do. They said, put them on a diet. So the next day she goes out and she buys all this diet food for like a month, and she puts it in the fridge, and we literally eat everything in one day. She's like, she doesn't know what to do. She's exasperated. I would just hear, Alexander, get down to the kitchen! Alexander! That's all day long. So she goes to Sears, and she sees that they have locking refrigerators. Now, they did have locking freezers, believe it or not, but they didn't have locking refrigerators. So she went to the hardware department, and she was very resourceful, and she got the biggest chain I've ever seen. It looked like something out of Dungeons and Dragons. And she brought it home, and she wrapped it around the double doors of the refrigerator. Now, we had one of those refrigerators that had two side by side, and she wrapped it like 3 times and put this giant padlock. So there was no way we're getting in there. Me and my brother and sister just stood there and stared and looked at this thing like, what are we going to do now? If you pulled one side, wouldn't open. Left side wouldn't open. But if you pulled both of them at the same time, there was a little crack. Just enough to see all the way up and down and to get a hand in it. So I just reached right in and said, I'm going to get her and I'm going to get what I need to eat. My hand is fat. My hand is stuck inside. It also had a bunch of chains hanging down because there's a lot of slack on this big chain. So it sounded like an alarm. So you literally hear like the alarm. So she'd hear me, she'd be like, Alexander, I hear you in the kitchen. Get out! Because the chains be rattling. So I have to have my little brother holding the chains up so they wouldn't rattle. She came running. My hand is now stuck inside. I'm panicking. I'm like, my hand's too fat. What am I going to do? She comes running. We couldn't get busted. Yank my hand out. It gets stuck on a chain. I actually have a scar here to this day from that chain. And I just was resolved. I guess we're going to be on a diet. Now, we had a pool outside. We were one of the few kids in the neighborhood that had in-ground pool. So my friend Allison Herwood, who lived next door, used to always want to go swimming. So she came over one day and she just said, come on, you're not swimming anymore. And of course I wasn't swimming because now I was a fat kid with boobies and I didn't want to take my shirt off. So I said, you know what, let's go swimming. So we went out back, Allison takes off her shirt and I'm just looking at her and I'm like, wow. And she's like, what's the matter? You've seen me shirtless before, not shirtless, but and I just was looking at her and I said, those arms, those beautiful, spindly, long, slender arms. She had arms like a spider. And I knew that when I pulled both doors open, she'd be able to reach in and grab whatever I wanted. So that night, I arranged the ring. My mother also put all the ring dings and the Twinkies and all the snack junk food in the freezer because that way we couldn't eat it. It was harder to eat. She thought that it's frozen, it's hard. You know, we're not really gonna have one. Like, you know, microwaves weren't invented yet, so, but still that didn't stop us. I would just chomp on Twinkies frozen to this day are like the best thing ever. So Allison would come in, she'd sneak her hand, she'd grab the Twinkies, she'd grab whatever it is that we needed, and we were in Fat City. I was just loving it. And one night, I called up Allison, I said, Allison, you need to come over because I am just starving. And she comes over like at 9:30. And my mother's like, Allison, what are you doing here? It's 9:30 at night. And she's like, Alex is hungry. My mother's like, huh? Like, I was like, no! Alex, we're going to watch TV. So me and Allison go downstairs, we watch TV, we're hanging out. Finally can hear, we have one of those basement TV rooms that you can hear every step upstairs. I finally hear that the coast is clear. So we go sneaking up the stairs. And I pull the doors open. We already mastered the chain alarm. So we get it open, she starts reaching, getting things out, frozen ring dings, bomb pops. I don't know if you all remember those bomb pops with the 3 different colors. That was her favorite, and I had to put something in there for her to want to get it out. So we're reaching, then out of nowhere, my mother comes screaming out, Alexander! Allison! Allison, what are you doing? He's too fat, what are you doing? And we were busted. So that summer, Allison never got to swim in my pool again, and I was stuck with Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution on my summer reading list.